The horizon's edge disappeared on a Tuesday. Captain James Walker had been piloting humanity's first true deep space vessel on what was supposed to be a routine survey mission to the outer reaches of the solar system. The mission was historic, but straightforward: collect data on the Kuiper Belt, analyze several anomalous readings near the heliopause, and return to Earth orbit within 6 months. At Mission Control in Houston, Flight Director Elena Reyes sipped her third cup of coffee as she monitored the ship's telemetry. The horizon's edge had been performing flawlessly during its 3-month outbound journey. "Captain Walker, we're seeing an unusual energy spike in your readings," she said, frowning at the sudden fluctuations on her screen. "Can you confirm?" Static crackled through the speakers. When Walker's voice finally came through, it sounded distant, almost ethereal. "Control, we're experiencing something unprecedented. There's some kind of distortion in space ahead of us. It's not on any of our charts." The mission specialists around Elena exchanged worried glances. "Captain, we recommend immediate course correction. Pull back and maintain position while we analyze—" "Too late," Walker interrupted. "We're being pulled toward it. The engines can't compensate." His voice remained remarkably calm. "Control, we're recording everything. If we don't make it back, someone needs to know." The transmission deteriorated into unintelligible fragments. On the screens, the ship's signal wavered, then vanished completely. For 72 hours straight, the best minds on Earth worked to re-establish contact. The United Space Coalition deployed every resource available: radio telescopes, satellite arrays, quantum communication attempts. But the horizon's edge had simply disappeared without a trace. 2 weeks after the disappearance, the USC held a solemn memorial service for the crew of 7. President Adams delivered a speech lauding their courage and sacrifice in the name of human advancement. The world mourned, then gradually moved on. Dr. Thomas Reed, the ship's designer, did not. He refused to accept that his creation and its crew were simply gone, while others redirected their focus to safer ventures within the solar system. Reed converted his basement into an impromptu listening station. Every night, he sat among jury-rigged equipment, scanning frequencies most considered pointless to monitor. "They're still out there," he insisted to anyone who would listen, which became fewer people as months stretched into years. 5 years passed. The USC had launched 3 new exploration vessels, all confined to the inner solar system. The horizon's edge became a footnote in history books, a cautionary tale about pushing too far too fast, until the day every astronomical observatory on Earth registered an object decelerating at the edge of the solar system. Elena Reyes, now director of space operations, was woken at 3:17 a.m. by an urgent call. "Ma'am, you need to see this," her assistant said, voice trembling with excitement or fear, perhaps both. The object was moving in a controlled manner, following a direct trajectory toward Earth. Its size and configuration matched the horizon's edge, yet the energy signatures were like nothing ever recorded from a human vessel. Elena ordered all available resources directed toward the approaching ship. As data streamed in, impossibilities piled up. The vessel's hull was intact, but fundamentally altered, appearing to shimmer between states of matter. Its propulsion system defied known physics, and most strangely, it was broadcasting on USC frequencies, using encryption protocols that had been obsolete for years. "This is Captain James Walker of the Horizon's Edge," came the transmission that changed everything. "Request permission to return home. We bring knowledge beyond imagination." The message repeated, crystal clear despite traveling across vast distances instantaneously, an impossibility that was just the first of many to come. In his basement, Thomas Reed smiled as his equipment finally registered the signal he'd always believed would come. They were back, but how changed remained to be seen. The horizon's edge hung in Earth orbit like a fever dream, familiar in shape but wrong in every detail. The ship's hull rippled with subtle iridescence, appearing solid one moment and semi-transparent the next. Where once had been standard metallic plating and solar arrays now existed a seamless surface that seemed to absorb and emit light simultaneously. Conventional sensors struggled to maintain lock on the vessel, as if it partially existed in another dimension altogether. in the maximum security quarantine facility hastily established on the International Lunar Base, Elena Reyes waited with a team of specialists. None of the usual protocols seemed adequate for this situation, but humanity had to start somewhere. The USC Security Council had nearly voted to destroy the ship immediately upon arrival. Only Elena's impassioned argument had won the crew a chance. "Initiating docking procedures," announced the technician beside her. "The horizon's edge is complying, I think." Through the reinforced viewport, Elena watched as the transformed ship extended what appeared to be a docking collar, though it looked more grown than manufactured. When it connected with the lunar base airlock, the metals seemed to flow into each other, creating a perfect seal. "Atmospheric analysis complete," reported Dr. Keller, the chief xenobiologist. "The air inside the ship is breathable, standard oxygen-nitrogen mix, but with trace elements we can't identify." Elena nodded. "Open the inner door." Captain James Walker stepped through first. Physically, he appeared unchanged. The same tall frame and steady blue eyes Elena remembered from 5 years ago. Yet something in his manner of movement seemed subtly alien, as if his body now operated according to different physical laws. Behind him came the other 6 crew members, equally unchanged yet fundamentally different. They moved in perfect coordination, like components of a single organism. 5 years, Elena said, breaking the silence. "You've been gone 5 years. Walker's expression remained neutral. "For you, perhaps. For us, time became a suggestion, rather than a rule." "Where have you been?" Dr. Keller asked. "Everywhere," replied navigator Melissa Ford, her voice overlapping with Walker's in perfect harmony. "Nowhere. Beyond." Thomas Reed, who had insisted on being present despite official objections, stepped forward. "What happened to my ship?" "Your ship evolved," Walker said simply. "As did we." Reed approached the viewing port and placed his hand against the glass, looking out at his creation. "How?" "We encountered what you might call a fold in reality," Walker explained. "A place where the fundamental forces of the universe converge and can be rewritten. We call it the Nexus." Elena felt a chill despite the controlled temperature. "And this Nexus changed you? Changed the ship?" "It showed us potential," responded engineer David Chen. "The ship adapted accordingly, as did we." "Why did you come back?" asked the security officer, hand never straying far from his sidearm. For the first time, Walker smiled, the expression both familiar and unsettlingly precise. "Because we're still human. Changed, yes. Enhanced beyond what you would consider possible, certainly. But in our cores, we remain human. Earth is still our home. And," continued Walker, his gaze sweeping across the assembled specialists, "because what we discovered out there will either elevate humanity to heights unimagined or annihilate us completely. The choice will be yours." From his pocket, Walker produced a small object that defied visual focus, at once crystal, metal, and energy. It hovered above his palm, rotating slowly. "This contains information about technologies that will transform human civilization," he said. "Clean energy beyond measurement. Medical advances that will eliminate disease. Propulsion systems that will make the stars our neighbors, rather than distant dreams." Elena studied the object warily. "And what do you want in exchange?" "Understanding," replied Walker. "The Nexus is expanding. In approximately 50 Earth years, it will reach this solar system. Humanity must be ready." "Ready for what?" Reed asked. Walker's eyes seemed to look beyond the room, beyond the lunar base, perhaps beyond time itself, transcendence. Outside the viewport, the horizon's edge pulsed with internal light, as if responding to Walker's words. Its transformed hull now appeared to be studying them as intently as they studied it. "We are the harbingers," Walker continued, his voice resonating with an authority that hadn't been there before. "We stand between humanity and the void, between understanding and oblivion. We returned to prepare the way." Elena fought to maintain her composure. "Prepare the way for what, exactly?" "Evolution," all 7 crew members answered in unison. "The next step in human existence." 3 days into the quarantine, the truth became impossible to ignore. The crew of the Horizon's Edge were no longer entirely human. Medical scans revealed cellular structures that self-repaired at extraordinary rates. Their neural patterns showed synchronization that should have been impossible between separate individuals. And most disturbingly, their DNA contained sequences that Dr. Keller insisted couldn't have evolved naturally on Earth. Yet in all psychological assessments, they expressed the same personalities, memories, and emotional attachments they'd had before their disappearance. They were the same people, just enhanced beyond recognition. They should be classified as a new species entirely, Dr. Keller argued during the daily briefing. Their capabilities exceed ours by orders of magnitude. Elena shook her head. That would justify every fear-based response the Security Council is pushing for. Detainment, experimentation, possible neutralization, which would be a catastrophic mistake, Thomas Reed interjected. Have you analyzed the preliminary data they've shared? Their understanding of physics alone could advance our civilization by centuries. In the observation room below them, Captain Walker sat motionless, eyes closed. Though isolated from the conversation, he smiled slightly as if privy to every word. They've allowed us to examine only a fraction of the information they brought back, Elena reminded them. The crystal device contains petabytes of data we can't access without their cooperation. The intercom crackled. You could simply ask, instead of deliberating about us. Walker's voice came through clearly. The room had been designed to be soundproof. The monitoring equipment gave no indication that the communication system had been activated. Elena pressed the response button. How are you doing this? The barriers between systems are more permeable than you realize, Walker replied. Just as the barriers between minds can be. Between stars. Between possibilities. She exchanged glances with her colleagues. We've been tasked with determining if you pose a threat. We don't. But the Nexus might, if humanity faces it unprepared. Elena made a decision. She left the observation deck and entered Walker's room directly, dismissing the security protocol with her override. Show me, she said simply. Not just data. Help me understand what happened to you out there. Walker studied her for a long moment. It will be easier to show than explain. He extended his hand. Do you trust me, Elena? She hesitated only briefly, before taking it. I trust the James Walker I knew. The moment their fingers touched, Elena's consciousness expanded beyond her body. Images and concepts flooded her mind. The Horizon's Edge approaching a shimmering distortion in space. The crew's terror turning to wonder as their ship was enveloped. The revelation of existence beyond three-dimensional constraints. And finally, the Nexus itself. A confluence of all possible realities where the laws of physics became malleable. When she pulled her hand away, tears streamed down her face. My God, she whispered. It's beautiful. And terrifying, Walker added softly. No human mind can fully comprehend it without changing. We had no choice. We were immersed in it. But Earth has time to prepare, to adapt gradually. The crystal? A teaching tool. It contains the science needed to develop defenses and adaptations before the Nexus arrives. Humanity must evolve, but on its own terms, maintaining what makes us uniquely human while transcending current limitations. Elena's communicator buzzed with urgent messages. Security protocols had been breached. Her unauthorized entry had been detected. They're sending armed guards, she said. Walker nodded calmly. Expected. Fear is the first response to change. The door burst open as a tactical team entered, weapons raised. Step away from him, Director Reyes, ordered the commander. Elena didn't move. Lower your weapons. That's an order. Our orders come directly from the Security Council, ma'am. Walker stood slowly, placing himself between Elena and the guns. Violence is unnecessary. We anticipated resistance. Outside, alarms began to sound. On screens throughout the facility, images appeared of the Horizon's Edge. The ship was changing again, its structure flowing like liquid metal. What's happening? Demanded the security commander. Insurance, Walker replied. The ship carries copies of everything we learned. If humanity rejects our offering here, seeds will be planted elsewhere. Those more receptive will receive the knowledge. Elena realized with sudden clarity what was happening. The ship is launching probes. Walker nodded. To research facilities, universities, and individuals worldwide who might understand. The evolution cannot be stopped, only guided. Through the viewport, they watched as hundreds of small, shimmering objects detached from the horizon's edge, streaking toward Earth like meteors. "What have you done?" whispered Elena. "Given humanity a choice," Walker answered. "The same choice we faced in the Nexus: adapt or perish." The world fractured along ideological lines in the weeks following what became known as the dispersion, the day hundreds of crystalline data modules from the horizon's edge rained down across Earth. Most major governments attempted to contain the artifacts, declaring them potential biohazards or alien technology too dangerous for civilian access. But they had spread too widely, too strategically. Independent research labs, universities, and even private citizens found themselves in possession of knowledge that defied conventional understanding. In her temporary office at the United Nations Special Committee on Extraterrestrial Contact, Elena fought to maintain order in a rapidly changing landscape. 17 countries have reported successful implementation of the energy conversion technology, her assistant reported. Power outputs exceeding anything on record, with zero radiation or environmental impact. "And the medical applications?" Elena asked. "The new cellular regeneration therapy has cured terminal cancer in all test subjects. The WHO is calling it miraculous." Outside her window, protesters clashed in the streets of New York. Some carried signs declaring "Embrace evolution," while others warned of human extinction by alien deception. The division ran through every level of society. Thomas Reed burst into her office without announcement, eyes wild with excitement. "They've done it. My team reverse-engineered the propulsion concept from the crystal data. We achieved faster-than-light travel in a laboratory setting." Elena nodded, unsurprised. "Captain Walker said this would happen. Accelerated development across all fields of science." "Not just acceleration," Reed insisted. "Transformation. These aren't incremental improvements. They're revolutionary paradigm shifts. Within a year, we could have ships capable of reaching nearby star systems." "And what will we find there?" Elena asked softly. "More nexuses? More transformations we're not ready for?" Reed's enthusiasm dimmed slightly. "The Security Council is still holding the crew in isolation, you know. Their insights could be invaluable during this transition. The Council fears them. With good reason." Elena pulled up classified footage on her screen. Captain Walker phasing through a solid wall of his containment cell before being coaxed back by Dr. Keller. "Their abilities continue to evolve. They barely qualify as human anymore. Yet they retain their humanity in every way that matters," Reed countered. "Their ethics, their compassion, their connection to their former lives." The debate was interrupted by an urgent alert. Around the world, people who had come into direct contact with the crystal artifacts were exhibiting unexpected physiological changes. Increased cognitive function, accelerated healing, telepathic connections with others similarly affected. The first wave of human evolution had begun without official sanction. At the secured facility where the Horizon's Edge crew was detained, Captain Walker sat cross-legged in his cell, eyes closed in meditation. Through his enhanced perception, he sensed the changes rippling across the planet, minds awakening to new potential, bodies beginning transformations that would culminate generations later. The door to his cell opened, admitting Dr. Keller along, with 3 armed guards. "You knew this would happen," Keller said without preamble. "The crystals are changing people." Walker opened his eyes, only enhancing what was already there. "Human potential has always been greater than you realized. The Security Council is divided. Half want to destroy all artifacts and execute your crew as a precaution. The other half want to embrace the changes completely." "And what do you want, Doctor?" Keller hesitated. "I want to understand. The changes in my own body are frightening, yet exhilarating." Walker's expression softened. "The fear is natural. We felt it too, in the beginning. Does it end? The transformation? It stabilizes eventually, finding equilibrium with your essential nature. You remain yourself, just more." Walker stood with fluid grace. The real question is, will humanity tear itself apart before reaching that equilibrium? Outside the facility, the divisions had grown violent. Military forces had been deployed in 23 countries to contain riots between those embracing the new technologies and those resisting them. Religious leaders variously declared the changes divine intervention or demonic influence. Scientists split between cautious study and eager implementation. In orbit, the transformed Horizon's Edge continued its silent vigil, occasionally releasing new streams of data to selected receivers on Earth. In her office, Elena made a decision that would alter the course of human history. She authorized the release of the Horizon's Edge crew. They're the only ones who truly understand what's happening to us, she told the outraged Security Council. We need their guidance now more than ever. As Captain Walker and his crew stepped into freedom for the first time in months, they found a world in turmoil, standing at the precipice of either a new golden age or self-destruction. Now comes the hard part, Walker told his crew as they gazed upon the changed Earth. Now we must help them find the balance we discovered, between what they were and what they're becoming. Navigator Ford nodded solemnly. Between human limitations and cosmic potential. They may not all thank us for this gift, added Engineer Chen. Walker watched as another riot broke out in the distance. No great evolution comes without resistance, but humanity must adapt. He turned to face his crew, their eyes reflecting the same otherworldly understanding. The Nexus approaches. We have work to do. 6 months after the release of the Horizon's Edge crew, the pattern of human development accelerated beyond what even Walker had anticipated. The former captain stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed Nexus Preparation Center, watching as the first generation of evolved humans demonstrated abilities once confined to science fiction. Children born to parents who had interfaced with the crystal technology displayed intuitive understanding of concepts their teachers struggled to comprehend. Hospitals reported miraculous recoveries as enhanced immune systems conquered previously terminal conditions. And most significantly, the first intentional mental links between evolved humans had been established without physical contact. They're progressing faster than we did, Walker remarked to Elena, who had become the primary liaison between traditional governments and the growing evolved population. Is that concerning? She asked. Her own limited exposure to the crystal had triggered subtle changes, enhanced intuition, improved memory recall, occasional flashes of others' emotions. Not concerning. Fascinating. Humanity is proving more adaptable than the Nexus itself predicted. The Nexus predicted? Walker smiled enigmatically. The Nexus isn't just a place or phenomenon. It possesses a form of consciousness, a sentience beyond our understanding. It tests species it encounters. Tests them for what? Worthiness. Potential. The ability to transcend their original limitations without losing their essential nature. Below them, a young girl of perhaps 7 years old was telekinetically assembling complex molecular structures while explaining quantum principles to wide-eyed scientists. Her parents, both early recipients of crystal exposure, watched with pride tempered by lingering disbelief. Not everyone is changing, Elena noted. Some remain completely unaffected, despite direct contact with the artifacts. Walker nodded. The potential was always distributed unevenly among your species. Some minds are more receptive than others. Some bodies more adaptable. But even those who don't evolve directly benefit from the advancements. The division between evolved and traditional humans had created new societal tensions, but also unexpected cooperation. Enhanced humans developed technologies that improved life for all. Traditional humans provided cultural stability and ethical frameworks to guide the rapid changes. Thomas Reed joined them on the observation deck, his aged face contrasting with the vitality in his movements. Another beneficiary of the new medical technologies, though his mind remained conventionally human. The first deep space vessel using Nexus-derived propulsion is ready for launch, he announced proudly. We're calling it Horizon's Legacy. Appropriate, Walker replied. Who commands? Her? Commander Lisa Rodriguez, one of the evolved, but with traditional space training. The perfect bridge between worlds. Elena studied the data tablet Reed handed her. A 5-year mission to establish monitoring outposts along the predicted path of the Nexus. Ambitious. Necessary, corrected Walker. The Nexus moves through the cosmos on trajectories that span millennia. Understanding its approach is crucial to preparation. Outside the center's vast windows, the transformed Horizon's Edge descended from orbit for the first time since its return. Its fluid, shimmering hull had stabilized into a new configuration that somehow managed to look both alien and distinctly human in design. Why now? Elena asked. Why bring the ship down after all this time? Because its journey is complete, Walker explained. The Horizon's Edge was transformed to serve as a messenger and repository of knowledge. Now that humanity has begun its evolution, the ship will become something new. As they watched, the vessel settled on the vast landing pad. Its hull began to shift once more, flowing like quicksilver before expanding outward. Within minutes, it had transformed from a ship into what appeared to be the foundation of a structure. What is it doing? Reed whispered in awe. Becoming the first Nexus Gate, Walker replied. A training ground where evolved humans can learn to navigate the boundaries between dimensions, a crucial skill for the coming encounter. Elena felt a mixture of wonder and apprehension. You never mentioned this possibility. Some revelations can only be understood when minds are ready to receive them. Walker turned to face her directly. The Nexus isn't just approaching Earth physically. Its influence extends across dimensions. The more evolved humans become, the more they'll perceive its presence. And when it fully arrives? Walker's expression grew solemn. That depends on how well humanity prepares. The Nexus offers transcendence to worthy species, or extinction to those unprepared for cosmic awareness. As if responding to his words, the transformed ship continued its metamorphosis. Spires of impossible architecture rose skyward, enclosing spaces that seemed to bend reality itself. Those watching with evolved perception could see energies flowing through pathways that existed, partially in other dimensions. The next phase begins, Walker announced. Now we teach humanity to walk between worlds. 10 years after the return of the Horizon's Edge, Earth had become unrecognizable to anyone from the pre-contact era. Cities incorporated biological architecture that grew and healed itself. Transportation networks operated on principles that bent space-time locally. Medicine had advanced beyond treating illness to optimizing human potential. Yet despite these advancements, humanity remained deeply divided. The evolved, now comprising roughly 30% of the global population, possessed abilities that had birthed a new kind of civilization alongside the old. The traditionalists maintained conventional human existence, benefiting from new technologies while rejecting physiological and neural enhancement. Between these factions stood the Horizon 7, Walker and his crew, serving as mediators, teachers, and living reminders of what awaited when the Nexus arrived. In the central chamber of what had once been the Horizon's Edge and was now the sprawling Nexus Gate complex, Walker convened the Global Preparation Council, representatives from both evolved and traditional factions. 40 years remain before the Nexus intersects with our solar system, he began without preamble. Our monitoring stations in deep space confirm its trajectory remains constant. Elena Reyes, now in her 70s but kept vital by medical advancements, studied the holographic projection showing the Nexus's approach. The outer colonies on Mars and Europa report increased dimensional fluctuations. They're requesting additional shielding technology. Approved, Walker replied. Walker, the colonies will experience effects first as the Nexus's influence extends ahead of its physical presence. Thomas Reed's son, Michael, represented the traditionalist faction. Unlike his father, who had embraced limited enhancements before his death 3 years earlier, Michael remained determinedly conventional. My constituents continue to express concern about coerced evolution, he stated firmly. The pressure on children to undergo enhancement therapy increases as the Nexus approaches. We demand assurances of choice. Walker acknowledged him with respect. Choice remains paramount. Not all must evolve physically, but understanding must be universal. Even traditionalists must comprehend what approaches. The Nexus Gate behind them pulsed with energy, its impossible architecture serving as both training facility and research center. Within its chambers, evolved humans learned to perceive multiple dimensions simultaneously, a skill that Walker insisted would be crucial for survival. Commander Rodriguez, recently returned from the Deep Space Monitoring mission, presented her findings. The Nexus appears to be accelerating. Current calculations suggest arrival in 36 years rather than 40. A murmur of concern spread through the council. "Can we be ready?" asked the representative from the African Union, herself partially evolved. Walker's expression remained serene. "The question isn't whether we'll be ready in time. It's whether we'll be ready together." Later that evening, Walker stood alone on the observation platform overlooking what had once been Houston, but now served as the primary Nexus preparation center. The city blended traditional architecture with evolved biological structures that glowed softly in the twilight. Elena joined him, moving more slowly than she once had, but with the dignity of a life dedicated to shepherding humanity through its greatest transition. "You're worried," she said, not a question but an observation. Walker didn't deny it. "The division runs deeper than I anticipated. Many traditionalists still believe we're harbingers of human extinction rather than evolution. Can you blame them? Their children develop abilities they can't understand. Their world changes faster than they can adapt." "The Nexus doesn't grant exemptions for hesitation," Walker replied. "When it arrives, all humanity will face the same choice we faced: transcend or perish. Perhaps both paths represent valid forms of humanity," Elena suggested. "Must everyone evolve as you did?" Walker considered this. "No, but everyone must understand. Ignorance will be fatal when dimensions intersect." In the Nexus gate behind them, a training session was underway. 20 evolved humans, ranging from teenagers to elders, practiced perceiving reality through dimensional filters. Under the guidance of Engineer Chen, they learned to see beyond three-dimensional constraints. "I've studied the historical records of your return extensively," Elena said after a pause. "You never fully explained why the Nexus released you, why it allowed you to return to warn us." Walker turned to face her. "Because humanity impressed it. How could it even know about us before contact? The Nexus exists partially outside conventional time. It perceived humanity's potential timelines stretching across millennia. Our creativity, our resilience, our capacity for both destruction and transcendence." He gestured toward the city below, where evolved and traditional humans coexisted despite their differences. This struggle between preservation and transformation? The Nexus values this tension. Species that evolve too readily lose their essential nature. Those that resist too firmly stagnate and die. "So we're still being tested," Elena concluded. "Until the moment of convergence," Walker confirmed. "And the test isn't whether we all evolve identically, but whether we can maintain our humanity, our compassion, our creativity, our mutual respect, while facing fundamental transformation." As night fell completely, the Nexus Gate began its evening cycle, pulsing with energies visible only to evolved perception. Throughout Earth and its colonies, similar structures, smaller but growing, prepared humanity for what approached. Walker placed his hand on the railing, the material responding subtly to his touch. "We have much work still to do." "Then we'd better continue," Elena replied with the determination that had carried her through decades of preparation. "One day at a time," Walker smiled, a rare expression of genuine emotion. That, Elena Reyes, is perhaps the most essentially human approach possible. Together they turned back toward the gate, toward the future that rushed to meet them, carrying both promise and peril in equal measure. The day of convergence dawned clear and quiet across Earth. 35 years, 7 months, and 14 days after the return of the horizon's edge, the Nexus at last reached the outer boundary of the solar system. Humanity had transformed, itself in preparation. The distinction between evolved and traditional humans had gradually blurred into a spectrum of adaptation. Some embraced full physical and neural enhancement. Others maintained conventional human forms while developing dimensional awareness. Still others remained entirely traditional, but contributed through technological innovation and cultural preservation. The original Nexus Gate, grown from the transformed horizon's edge, now anchored a global network of similar structures, each serving as both beacon and shield against the approaching convergence. In what had once been Houston but was now called First Contact City, Captain James Walker gathered with the remaining members of his original crew. Of the 7, only 5 remained. Navigator Ford and Engineer Chen had eventually discorporated entirely, evolving beyond physical form to serve as guides in the dimensional boundaries where humanity would soon need pathfinders. "It begins," Walker said simply, as the Nexus gate before them pulsed with energies visible across multiple perceptual spectra. Elena Reyes, now in her final days at 103 years old, sat in a mobility chair beside him. She had accepted limited enhancements over the decades, enough to extend her life and maintain her faculties, but not enough to fundamentally alter her human experience. She had chosen to witness the convergence through human eyes. "Was it worth it?" she asked Walker quietly. "All the struggle, the division, the fear?" Walker considered her question with the thoughtfulness that had guided humanity through its preparation. "Ask me again when we see what emerges from today." Around the world, humans of all types gathered at Nexus gates or in community centers, or simply at home with loved ones. Global communications remained active, broadcasting a unified message of preparation and calm in hundreds of languages. In orbit, the Sentinel fleet, ships built with Nexus-derived technology, maintained position, ready to assist Earth through the transition. Commander Lisa Rodriguez, now approaching retirement age but still vital, directed operations from the flagship Horizon's Legacy. "Dimensional fluctuations increasing," reported her science officer. "The Nexus boundary will make contact with Neptune's orbit in approximately 47 minutes. Rodriguez acknowledged the report calmly. After decades of preparation there was little left to do but witness. On Earth's surface, in the central chamber of the original Nexus gate, Walker activated the final sequence. The structure's energy pathways illuminated fully, connecting to every other gate worldwide in a network designed to stabilize local space during the convergence. "All systems operational," confirmed Technical Officer Robert Miller, the youngest of the original crew. "Dimensional buffers at maximum capacity." Nearby, Michael Reed, Thomas Reed's son who had once led the Traditionalist faction, now stood as representative of the integrated council governing Earth's response. His journey from resistance to acceptance had mirrored humanity's larger path. "The communities are ready," he reported. "Even those who chose to remain fully traditional have completed the awareness training." Walker nodded in satisfaction. "Then we've done all we can." The first visible sign of the Nexus's arrival came as a subtle distortion in the sky, a shimmering like heat waves that gradually coalesced into patterns too complex for conventional vision to track. Those with enhanced perception described overlapping realities becoming momentarily visible before settling back into apparent normalcy. In the chamber of the Nexus gate, Elena reached for Walker's hand. "I'm afraid," she admitted. "As am I," he replied, surprising her. "Fear is appropriate. When facing transcendence, the Nexus reached them not as a physical phenomenon, but as a wave of altered reality that passed through the solar system like a tide. As it washed over Earth, the Nexus gates flared with blinding intensity, channeling and directing energies that would otherwise have torn reality apart. For a moment that stretched beyond normal time perception, every human on Earth experienced simultaneity, a brief glimpse of all possible paths, all potential futures, all iterations of humanity scattered across dimensions. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the moment passed. The gates stabilized, their energy patterns settling into new configurations. The sky returned to normal appearance, though those with enhanced perception could see subtle changes in the underlying fabric of reality. Walker opened eyes that had been closed during the peak of convergence. "Status report," he requested. Around the world, check-ins began flowing in. No catastrophic failures, no mass casualties. Earth had weathered the initial contact intact, but the convergence had only begun. "Something's happening," Elena whispered, pointing to the center of the chamber where reality seemed to fold in upon itself. A figure emerged, not from a door or portal, but from what appeared to be a thinning of the boundaries between dimensions. It wore the form of a human for convenience of communication, but all present could sense its true nature extended far beyond physical manifestation. "I am an emissary of the Nexus," it stated in a voice that resonated across multiple perceptual channels simultaneously. I come to witness what humanity has become. Walker stepped forward. We have prepared as best we could with the warning we were given. The emissary turned its attention to the assembled humans, its form shifting subtly as it adapted to their perceptions. The Nexus has encountered countless species across the cosmos, it continued. Most fail. They either cling too rigidly to their original forms, rejecting evolution, or they surrender their essential nature in pursuit of advancement. And humanity? Walker asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Humanity has achieved the balance. You have evolved tremendously while preserving what makes you uniquely human. Your compassion, your creativity, your stubborn determination to forge your own path. Around the world, similar emissaries appeared at each Nexus gate, delivering the same message in different words, but identical meaning. The convergence would continue for several days as the Nexus fully merged with local space-time, but the dangerous phase had passed. Earth would remain Earth. Humans would remain human, albeit with expanded definitions of both. The emissary raised its hand, gesturing toward the center of the chamber where a new form of energy began to coalesce. The Nexus offers a gift. Access to the dimensional pathways that connect all sentient civilizations. Humanity may now join the cosmic community as equals. Elena's eyes filled with tears. After a lifetime of preparation, of fear and hope intermingled, the moment had arrived not as an ending but as a beginning. We accept, she said simply. Walker nodded in agreement. We accept, with gratitude and responsibility. As the emissary completed the connection, opening Earth to its new place in the multidimensional cosmos, Walker felt the journey that had begun decades ago with the disappearance of the horizon's edge finally come full circle. The ship that had been gone forever had returned changed, and in doing so, had changed humanity forever as well. Not by force or conquest, but by offering the chance to evolve on their own terms, to face the universe with both wonder and wisdom. Across Earth, humans of all types looked toward the stars with new understanding. The boundaries between worlds had thinned, the impossible had become accessible, and humanity, in all its diverse forms, stepped forward together into a future limited only by imagination and courage. In the heart of the Nexus Gate, Walker placed his hand on Elena's shoulder as they watched the dimensional pathways unfold before them. Was it worth it? He asked, echoing her earlier question. Elena smiled, her aged face radiant with the light of new possibilities. Every moment, she answered. Every struggle. Every fear overcome. It was all worth it. And around them, the universe opened like a flower in bloom. Studied him. You were sent as a test, transformed and returned to see how your kind would respond. Many species reject their changed members. Many fracture and destroy themselves before convergence. We came close, admitted Michael Reed. There were times when violence nearly prevailed over understanding. Yet you persisted in unity despite divergence, observed the emissary. You maintained your essential humanity while embracing transformation. Elena spoke up from her chair. We had good teachers. She nodded toward Walker and his remaining crew.